Why did Hippocrates name his horrible disease that he wanted to, we call it Hippocrates' curse. That's what we call it. But why? Those in our order. Why did he call cancer the crab? He said, it reminded me of a crab. That's humbug. The real reason is because to defame the sign of Cancer, because it represents all things feminine, all things nurturing, and all things of the mother. He wanted to denigrate motherhood. Let's face it, that's what he was doing. Okay, that's the truth of it. Now, if people, from that ilk want to say that's probably not what he was doing, he didn't know, he was innocent, he just didn't know. Well, he knew because they were trying to put down astrology, and maybe a certain type of astrology, maybe Latin astrology, maybe the Latin language. Like there's certain words that you can say in one language, but you can't say them in another language. You say language. Why? Because you're using somebody else's language. Most bad words are simply using words from another language. Okay. Now, as we get into this more, though, let's take this time to talk about it. Okay. So, if you get into Kabbalah, you understand that the opposite of everything in this world is the spiritual realm in the upper world. And in the highest worlds, you have immortality, and you have where everything is just light, non-specified. Okay? Now, a stem cell that our body creates when we're going to heal something like an injury or an infection or anything like that, we have to repair a cell like a skin cell or a hair cell or whatever, or a bone cell. The stem cell comes in it's in an undifferentiated state, like in the field of light in the upper world, we have nothing's differentiated. When Jesus said in heaven there's not male and female and all that, all right? Things are not differentiated. And then things are not fallen. Now, the stem cell not only has to differentiate, but it also has to fall into mortality and not be immortal. So, in order for something to be healthy in the physical world, the stem cell has to fall into the lower worlds, and it has to be specific about which kind of cell it wants to be, and it has to become mortal. It has to have a beginning and have an end to be healthy. So if portions of someone have gone to the upper worlds and come back, it might not have been able to come back all the way and still retained some of that undifferentiated and immortal state, which then overtakes everything else. And also all of this, that human beings are, was said in the Georgia Guidestones, are a cancer let them not be a cancer upon the earth. Why? Because cancer, sign of Cancer rules what part of the body? It rules the breasts. It rules the breasts. That would, free food comes from nature. Free food comes from the breasts. Therefore, it's something that is despised by a lot of people who want to run a patriarchy. All right? And it's not just Catholics. And it's not just the Abrahamic religions. Also in Wicca, Wicca means male witch. Wicca means female witch. So there's always a patriarchy, no matter what you do. But with that said, it behooves all of us to start understanding that when you throw out these commercials that despise and say horrible things about cancer and cancer and cancer, these people who are born under this sign, and women in general, and how women feel about their own bodies to produce milk, becomes assaulted, bullied, and abused. And we need to put a stop to that. There's something that needs to be said. So we're putting it out there. Now, one more thing I'd like to say about this whole concept of all this abuse of the sign of Cancer, the crab, and the abuse of the feminine principle, and the abuse in not only religion, but in science as well, because they're attacking Cancer, the crab. Religion attacks the goddess, and science attacks the sign of Cancer, which is the goddess and rules the breasts. So it's a continuing attack. Because just because you're being, you're scientific and you're not religious doesn't mean you're necessarily being kind to women. Because we start saying cancer is a disease and you keep perpetuating that, scientists are just as guilty as religious people for denigrating the goddess. They're just as guilty for abusing women and misogyny. They're just as guilty. They're doing the same exact thing. All right? So this whole thing about the Georgia Guidestones and let man not be a cancer upon the earth. Let's wipe out cancer. The breast, mammals. So what kind of beings might be doing that? Maybe beings that are not mammals. Maybe intelligent beings that are not mammals. Maybe they're reptilians. Who knows? I don't know. I don't get into a lot of that stuff because I don't really know, but I do know one thing, is there's an effort to wipe out mammals. To wipe them out. And, you know, you have to think about that. And where is that coming from and who's doing that? Okay? So that's what I want to say about that. It's an intense topic, but somebody's got to say something because it's getting ridiculous. All right? People have to be educated and told what is going on. Because if you understand astrology, and you might not think too much about it. You say, oh, it's just a coincidence or just whatever, and you let it go. You know, like MVP, most valuable player in mitral valve prolapse. You know, okay, it's just one of those things. But it's more than that because, you know, and because of everything that we've said, you know, it's just an undercurrent of hatred toward the feminine principle. All right? And if you're only a scientist and you don't know about astrology, then you might think it's just a coincidence too. So I'm not saying that just because you're doing that necessarily that you knew or that, you know, because I'm a registered nurse and I'm also an astrologer, I put two and two together. And also I've studied feminism and I've studied Wicca and I've studied a lot of different religions, you know, a lot of religions. I've studied a lot of them. And, you know, there's a common thread through every single one. And there's a common thread through science, a common thread through religion. Hatred of the goddess, hatred of the feminine principle, hatred of the breast, hatred of nature, you know, wanting to abuse and use nature in a way that's just overwhelming, and that has got to be addressed and solved. And to just put blinders on and say, well, I don't want to change anything and we can't change it, it's too late, we can't change it. Now, yes, you can change it. You're hurting people. I'm not born in the sign of Cancer. That's not my sign. But all the people that I had come to me when I do readings for them, when I do their astrology, they're hurt. It hurts them. It ruins a lot of things that they don't feel good about themselves. And even, could it be that people don't want people to follow Western astrology? So maybe people who don't do Western astrology want to sway them away from it, so they attack it? I don't know. But it's something that needs to be addressed and it needs to be changed. I vote for calling it the curse of Hippocrates or Hippocrates curse, whatever. Give it another name. All right? All right. Thank you for listening.